Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the official Student Union's Hustings, presented to you by Manchester Media Group. Each panel will be 10 minutes long. The candidates will be being grilled on what they can do for you. Each candidate will be given 3 standard questions by our chair. Then the floor will be opened up to questions from you guys. Answers will be timed, so no one will be rambling for too long, and we'll have a break in the middle. So without further ado, we'll start with our General Secretary panel.
Okay, thank you everybody. I'm Tristan, and to start with, I'd like the candidates to introduce themselves and give a quick summary of why they want to be General Secretary.
Hi, it's nice to meet you all. I'm Matt Langford. I'm running on the basis of financial support, university engagement and accountability for all. And my slogan is Back Matt for Honest Chat.
Hi everyone, I'm Fatima. I'm running for Gen Sec, and my main priority is to bring back the culture of lifelong learning, because we get caught up in all the exams and uni stuff, we forget to become productive members of society. So I'm hoping to concentrate on that.
Hi, I'm Paul Simwe. I'm a postgraduate, running for General Secretary. I have 3 broad priorities. The first is improving the student experience. The second is student financing and jobs. And the final one regards communication, as well as getting your voice heard. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Will. I'm a third year politics and history student. I'm running for Gen Sec because I want to improve student safety, and particularly in regards to road landlords, which has been an issue that's affected me personally. I also want to build a more transparent union so that everyone knows what's going on, and also one that's more inclusive by introducing kosher food options to the SU.
Hello, I'm Shubham Daruka. I'm pursuing MSc in Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship. I'm standing for the post of General Sec. I have 3 priorities. Number 1 is safety in and around university accommodation, which deeply concerns me. Second one is increasing the variety of food in all the university cafeterias. And third is providing free space in the university for society events. Most of the events of the societies cannot be done because there isn't much space available in the university. So just all 3.
Okay, so 16% of students turned out in the last election last year, and 1.5% turned out in the referendum that we had over the officer roles. Additionally, the executive officers are being criticised for being insular and disconnected from the majority of the student body. What should be done?
One of my key manifesto pledges is all about accountability for the exec team, and what I'd be aiming to introduce is a social media outlet that would be similar to what we have for like the President of the United States, with like a POTUS account. It would be like General Sec account, UOM, and it'd be something that could be handed down throughout all the years that the exec team still run, and it would be a way for alumni to keep check of what the exec team's doing. And when students first come to university, there's that instant platform. They can find out who the General Secretary is, who the International Sec is, and so on and so forth. And I feel like social media really is the way now, because it's all right having posters up and around the university for the referendum, but if there's only going to be a 1.5% turnout, it does show that there's a problem, and I think social media will solve that problem.
I think that we should be talking to the students face to face, and I think Nos, who was the Gen Sec 2 years ago, she had Gen Sec surgeries where she would meet students wherever they needed, whenever they needed, and I think that's the only way to go, because you could miss out a lot of people and a lot of their stories if you don't talk to them face to face. And also, the best way to get to students is through word of mouth. So like they'll tell their friends, you talk to them, they get an impression of you, they talk to other positions, they'll get an impression of them. The only way is through coffee mornings, probably, like, or tea, or whatever it is, and that's how they'll remember you. That's how they'll know what kind of vibe you have, and that's how I think.
Yes, actually this touches me personally because I am a Res Life advisor at Hook House, so I'm in direct contact with the students, and that's one area I feel I am very well able to handle regarding getting the students' opinions. And the other thing is the social media. I think the union is handling social media in a terrible way. They do not have any presence on Instagram, on Snapchat. Kids these days don't use Facebook anymore. So where is that? Having 10 likes, the largest university students union in the UK having a post with 10 likes, it's frankly embarrassing. So we need to reimagine the way in which we communicate to the students.
To be honest, I agree with what's been said already. The point about NAR and also Alex, current General Secretary, doing GenSec on tour, I thought that was very successful. A lot of stuff that some of the other exec members, I think Riddy's very good on social media, shout out. And also mending relations with the media group, because it's been quite fractious sometimes in recent years about giving interviews and so on. So ways to just kind of reach as many students as possible, social media and directly, would be good.
So, one of my underlying and most important part of my manifesto is engagement. I believe without engagement from students, we as a student body cannot progress further. For me, it is also important to have a team of sabbatical officers who can work together to achieve a common goal, which is the empowerment of our students. It can be through a number of ways, like transparency or allowing students, sports clubs to achieve whatever they want to achieve.
Keep it down there, I'll ask from here. What do you think the appropriate relationship is between the SU and the university senior management? Start from that end.
Well, there's a good relationship between the university and the university support staff. I've been in the university for a couple of months and I've seen the community is great. And I've seen some of the most wonderful people and realized how wonderful is the support staff.
In terms of university management, I think that the SU has a kind of an important role in that we need to be having a kind of healthy, collaborative and a dialogue in order to get things done, because there's only so much you can do from standing on the street corner and telling them how horrible they are. But we need to be confrontational and point out where they're wrong. At the end of the day, we still need to see them regularly to make sure that we can affect change that really matters.
I've actually been a student leader in my previous university, and this issue comes up a lot. We had to look at how we interact with the administration from the position of we hate those guys, they hate us, but yet again we depend on them. So it's almost symbiotic in a way. You have to draw the line at certain times. At the same time, you also have to reach out. So it's a mix, but generally it should be a very interdependent and good relationship.
What I think of the current status right now is that it could do with more open communication and not defensive from either side. Yeah, so I would work on it being more of an open communication line kind of thing, and also maintaining a good relationship with them is important, but also holding them accountable is just as important, and I think that we probably lack in that sense, but yeah.
I think all the candidates made a very good point. I think holding them to account is crucial, but I also think transparency over what is the relationship between the SU and those in powerful positions. I think we are acting on behalf of the students, so therefore the students should know what decisions we are putting forward on behalf of them. So I would suggest that we need to keep on with just more information for what students can do to get involved in pushing the agenda forward.
As an example of policy that you might like to work on, because the previous or current General Secretary Alex has been working on it, he's tried to get Greater Manchester Combined Authority to have a shared bus pass between First and Stagecoach. As an example, would you continue with it, and if so, how would you go about it?
I think although it's a very good policy, I think the Stagecoach bus service as it is fine. I think it's one of the busiest bus routes in Europe. The students that do commute from Fallowfield very rarely have to rely on First buses. If elected, I would look to increase like a subsidy of the Stagecoach bus passes for those students living in Fallowfield. I think it ties into a point around safety in the Fallowfield area. People wouldn't be forced to walk places if they had, and there could be an option as well to expand it to first years. So instead of paying, say, 3,800 for Oak House Halls. If they put an extra £150 down before they come, they could get a bus pass on arrival rather than having to pay for a £1.50 bus to the SU, £1.50 back for like a week before they get a bus pass sorted. That's £20–30 of savings straight away, and it's something that would avoid any harm to them as well, because it is quite intimidating when you come to a new city. Yeah, sorry, knowing what buses to go on, thank you. Sorry.
One of my key manifesto points is to continue what Alex has been doing and create a bus pass that for students that includes Stagecoach, Magic and First buses, because not everyone lives in Fallowfield, and also during the weekends it takes way more time than just 5 minutes, 10 minutes to be waiting for a bus, and a lot of students work in the weekends too. A lot of students live in the North Campus and we forget about them a lot, and some of them are training at Armitage when they join sports teams. It would be so much easier if there was a pass for them that would bring them straight to Fallowfield when they need to. So yeah, I would continue working on that and make sure I could get a bus pass for students that combines all the services.
When I was doing some of my flat chats at Oak House, I asked the students about this, and actually not all of them were really enthusiastic about it because they were curious as to how much of an increment that would be financially to the amount for the bus pass. But of course some of them were interested, so I think I would look into just how much of an increment in the total bus pass fee that would mean if we were to get on board with first, and then try to see, maybe with a survey, find out if you're willing to pay £50 more or £30 more for an annual bus pass, just so that you can have first included.
Yeah, I think I agree with quite a lot of what Fatima said. I would continue Alex's scheme as it currently is, because at the end of the day, I think Matt talked about this on student safety, you can see for Fallowfield and Wings and wherever, empty buses going past that no student gets on, and again it's an issue that affects people who often remember. So for example, parent carers and part-time students, sometimes they're all over Greater Manchester, and sometimes it's only the first bus they can get in order to get back home to be safe. So for me it would be creating a approach, how we go about it. As a part-time community organiser, I have met and spoken with Andy Burnham quite a lot in terms of what we're doing around homelessness and the real living wage. So I think that we could really go about this in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I would definitely continue to connect with both the companies, Magic Bus and First Cut, to build a relationship with both of them so that we can get a bus pass inbuilt in both the companies.
The government's tuition fee review began last week. If you had the opportunity, what would your input be to this review?
I have a very strong opinion about this because I'm Spanish and I'm obviously studying in Spain, and I always looked up to education in Britain, but I think it would be very beneficial to society on the whole if we could attend university for free or for very low fees. Because not people want to study subjects that aren't necessarily applicable to the job, and they find it very daunting to pay £9,000 a year and maybe not have a job by the end of it. So it might be better if we could come to university and pay, say, £200 a year and find what we want to do with our life as opposed to our plans since we're 18.
My apologies, could you introduce yourself and then we'll continue with that question after,
Okay. My name's
we've
Eve.
gone through that.
I'm Standard Education Officer, and my 4 main points are improving podcasting when it's done, campaigning against marketisation of education, rising fees, and communications, and something that's alcohol, sorry.
Would you like me to
introduce yourself and then answer the question?
question about fees? I'm Olivia. I'm also Standard Education Officer. My biggest thing, I've been a student rep for 4 years and now a faculty officer. My biggest thing for being an education officer would be just giving students the tools to raise issues, follow them through, and being able to change things that are a problem on their courses and in their academic lives. It's just about improving the academic experience of students and giving them the ability to do so. I've also got some other cool things on my manifesto, so if you take the time to have a look, I haven't got time to go through it all here, but yeah. My opinion on fees. I am obviously against having £9,000 fees and them going up to £9,250. It is ridiculous. We should not be having to pay that much. However, the reviews going through at the moment, they are not positive, they're not in our favour, and I think the most likely thing we can do at the moment is to ensure that the interest rate is being pushed down, because 6.1% interest rate is absolutely ridiculous. I'm a final year and I'm already paying £6,000 in interest before I've even graduated. So I think the most likely thing we can do at the moment is try and push down that interest rate. Also, I think what is really important is to remember that lots of students are really struggling financially with their maintenance grants. They are the people who are dropping out of university, they cannot afford to go. Those are the people that are being forgotten about, and they don't really have any advocates. They can't afford to be here, and they're having to work their asses off in their part-time jobs, and they are failing with their grades, and they have to drop out of university, and they need someone to focus on them. And I'll be there. But, yeah.
I'm Adam, I'm a first year pharmacy student. I was elected as a faculty officer in October, and I now feel like I'm ready to sort of take on the responsibility of an exec role. Back to the question of the fees review, I think the government needs to decide whether they want education to be a public sort of asset or sort of marketise it into like a private market, if you would. I think education should be brought in line with healthcare, police force, you know, public services. It shouldn't be sort of, we should be seen as partners and scholars, not sort of consumers, just here as like a means of income. Something else I think we need to look at is maintenance grants. They say they're means tested, but I mean, there's only sort of so many brackets you can fall into, and students are really struggling with rent, especially international students or perhaps students who have to live out to live in student accommodation. And student accommodation sort of rent is absolutely ridiculous, and a maintenance grant of £3,000 a year when your accommodation is £6,000, it's just not possible. So I think, yeah, they've got to make their minds up whether they think education is a public sort of asset or should be brought into a private market, and I think it should be in public ownership.
Thanks. If you can keep the microphone, we'll do the same first. What is your current position on what is your position on the current UCU strikes, and in particular their impact on students?
I'm 100% behind the UCU and the strikes. I think that if we're going to have a good education, we need to have staff who are happy in work, feel like they've got a safe pension in work. We can't sort of have them sort of in work, sort of like, oh, am I going to be able to afford this when I choose to retire? I think students have the right to be angry, but I feel like they should direct that anger at Universities UK, and you should be asking them, why aren't my lecturers, you know, why are my lecturers' jobs on the line, why are they not getting paid what they should, why are their pensions getting axed? I think it's a really important issue, and I think one of the manifesto points is to work with academic staff on academic matters and employment matters. So I've recently developed a survey asking staff, are they happy in work, do they feel like they're getting enough recognition, do they feel like the pensions are safe, and a lot of them are saying no. So I feel like if we're going to have top class education, our staff need to feel like they're in secure work with a secure pension. So I'm 100% behind the UCU.
So backing the lecturer stroke, obviously, their pension should not be at risk in the way that they are. It's ridiculous. But I think the voice that's being forgotten is international students. They pay £21,000, some of them, upwards, every single year. They miss a lecture, they get a threatening email threatening their visas, and they're being forgotten in this conversation. We're not getting our fees back, we've been told this, and we're being used as pawns in this fight, which is a very valid fight, let's not forget. But international students are paying, they're missing out on about £2,000 worth of fees in these 3 weeks. And we should be directing our anger at the university, as well as the UK, for the lack of adequate response. We've not had an adequate response about the lack of teaching and how it's going to impact upon final years. We've not had an adequate response about how, especially international students, are going to be affected by this. And it's just not acceptable. We need better. We're paying like a lot of money in fees, and we're not being treated in an acceptable manner. So it's finding the balance between supporting our lecturers in a really valid and important fight, but also supporting the international students and getting the lectures that we need. We shouldn't be missing out on our teaching time.
I think everything's been said really. I absolutely back up the staff. I feel like it's ridiculous that our lecturers are struggling, because how are we expecting to get an outstanding education if the people that are teaching us are not sure whether they're going to be able to afford the retirement? I don't think I have anything else to add, but yeah, definitely backing up the staff.
Thanks. Okay, so the position of a postgraduate officer was proposed and then rejected by the student body for an executive role. What do you think the key concerns are for postgraduate students, and how do you intend to represent them?
I think the main issue with postgraduate students is that they're not necessarily on site all the time, or most of the time even. So they don't really get a say as to what's going on. I don't think that's a platform that for them to pose their worries or what they need to be done for them. So one of my main points in my manifesto is to improve communication between the Students' Union, the university and the students. And this would be done by creating a platform or improving social media, like somebody else said before, in such a way that their complaints can reach us even when they're not on site.
So I think a big problem at the moment is that postgraduates don't necessarily feel that students' unions for them. They don't necessarily feel that the services are there for them. There are services for them, but it's making sure that postgraduates know that. It's making sure that the exec is working for them as well. It's making sure that they know there are provisions for them, making them feel welcome. Having been on some society committees, it's making sure that societies are open and welcoming towards postgraduates as well. As an exec, we need to make more of an effort. The students' union needs to make more of an effort to ensure that postgraduates feel more welcome, and there just needs to be a bit of a change in culture. We have a lot of postgraduates and the involvement is quite low, and yeah, that needs to change. And I hope with a postgraduate role we can incorporate more involvement.
So my top manifesto pledge is to introduce a postgraduate officer. I was extremely disappointed when it was voted down in the Senate last year. There's 12,000 postgraduates at the University of Manchester, and it's hard for just one education exec officer to represent 12,000 postgrads and then all undergraduates as well. I feel like the main thing is to introduce a postgrad officer regardless of how difficult it's going to be. If rules need changing, then so be it, but we need to get a postgrad officer in. I've done a lot of work since October with postgraduates, and I feel like they feel like they've been sort of snubbed by the Students' Union, that they don't feel that they've got anyone to go to if they want to sort of get together in a group or hold events. They're upset that they don't have a space of their own. A lot of postgraduates, especially postgrad research, spend the day sort of alone in a lab, alone in an office. They haven't got people to talk to. They haven't got sort of social interaction that they need for like mental well-being. So I think a lot of their issues is that they haven't got anyone representing them in the union, and they want somewhere to go where they can sort of communicate, talk about the work, talk about how they're feeling, if they're feeling down, where we're going to signpost them to. Because at the minute, there's 12,000 students in this university that aren't adequately represented in the union. So I feel like we need a postgrad officer, and that, if I'm elected, that's one of the main things I'm going to push for.
Okay, thanks. So those are the three set questions. We have time. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi, so I'm a language student. I study German and the German department, and I feel a lot of the language departments are just appalling. There's been cuts that make the teachers overworked and literally on the verge of quitting. And we have a very poor choice of modules, so I've had friends of mine complaining that they can't choose any modules that interest them. So what are you guys going to do to improve the languages departments?
I think you've raised a really important question, especially with the recent redundancies at the university. A recent survey by the university found that a third of all staff feel that they're that stressed that it's starting to impact on their work, and they're having to take time out or they're not being as productive because of rising stress levels. And I think that if the university is going to cut staff, they need to ensure that students aren't sort of being cut out of that. They aren't sort of, their educators are being cut in half. You know, you mentioned that you aren't getting enough sort of choices when it comes to modules. I think the university needs to sort of give students what they need. So if you need more staff in order to pick a module that you want, they need to be providing that. They need to be providing those members of staff. I feel like a lot of sort of courses in this university can have staff. So in my department, for example, I do pharmacy, but dissertations can be done with medicine. So if staff can sort of cross over between schools, sort of give you the option to do, you know, the specific courses you want. I think that should be something that they should really think about. But no, I think if they're going to cut staff, they need to be accountable to you, and you need to have your opinion.
So I'm also a language student, and this is quite interesting because Spanish have had a terrible time of it. We've also had a lot of modules cut, and we've brought it to the teaching and learning committees and raised this with them. We've raised it with the head of SALC. They are aware that this is completely unacceptable. The choice is not there. The teachers are not in a great state right now. This is something I raised with the Board of Governors last week at our meeting, who were not aware of what was going on. They are now aware, don't worry. That we are pushing for stuff to be changed. Part of my manifesto is making sure more students have a voice at high levels of the university, which I think is really important, because often higher up in management and on for example, boards of governors, they don't always know what's going on. They aren't always aware of how students feel, and it's really important that the student voice is heard higher up, so change can be made. So that extra money that they might have in the corner stashed away can be put to good use. Maybe they can hire an extra person in the department, maybe an extra module can be put on. But it's really important the student voice gets heard, because they might not necessarily know. So it's important that representation is increased, and students can be raising these things at a high level. But yeah, we're raising it.
I think they all have really good points, but this also affects me personally because I take German and French as not part of my degrees. It's not part of my degree, but I take German and French at the university, and my German teacher is also quitting. So I feel this very close to me, and I feel the stress all the teachers have, and I agree it's a very big issue. So in my manifesto, one of my main points is to improve interdisciplinary learning and to get students involved in languages and workshops to expand them and improve them as people, not only as scholars. So I will definitely concentrate on getting the language department up and running again.
Thank you. That's the time we have.
My name is Matt Wynn, and I'm heading the panel for Campaigns, Community and Citizenship Officer. If you'd like to begin by introducing yourselves, and we'll start with the first of 3 questions. Okay.
Okay, so I'm Rachel Green, and my 3 main manifesto points are to improve housing, better student safety, and addressing homelessness.
Hi, my name is Huda Mori, and I wish to empower every single student to realise their potential in making a lasting impact both on campus and beyond.
Hey guys, I'm Shamima, and I have 5 manifesto points. The first one is to prevent exploitation from landlords. Second one, for more support for living at home students, because I feel like this is generally very neglected. For more workshops to support people to campaign. More focus on homelessness prevention strategies and student empowerment.
Hiya, so I've got a little poem that explains what I'm about. So, vote money instead, put worries about bad landlords back to bed. The thought of being ripped off give you chills? I'll ensure you're paying the right bills. Safety is a main priority. I'll make Fallowfield and Withington safer places to be by doing surveys to feed back to the university and talking to the council and your local MP.
It's a pretty phenomenal poem to follow. I'm Betsy, and I'm going for campaigns, obviously. One of the things that I really want to do is I want to get more students involved with campaigning. I think it can be quite intimidating often if you're not part of a society. And I myself haven't really been a major part of the SU in the last few years, but I've been campaigning across the Middle East and North Africa on refugee rights and also the environment and things like that. So I want to get sports more involved with campaigning and link up AU and fundraising, and just generally get more unity and between staff and students in the face of cuts.
Thank you. You want to pass the mic back then? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to answer the first question now, and if you could please limit your answers to just 1 minute only, just so we can get through all 3, because there's 5 candidates, and also so we can ask some questions from the audience. Thank you. So the first question. In response to an increase in violent attacks and burglaries in Rusholme, Fallowfield and Witherton this academic year, the current Communities Officer is set to introduce a night owl scheme by the end of this semester to train volunteer students in self-defence and welfare. This policy received mixed responses from students, with some questioning whether this training was appropriate given the extreme nature of some crimes committed against students. Will you continue this policy, and more importantly, what will you do to improve student safety on and off campus?
Okay, yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think this policy that Jack is trying to introduce is a great way to give people self-defense skills, and of course you shouldn't try to defend yourself if it is a situation of high risk, but of course it's great if you do have the skills. So in my manifesto I propose, for example, an app that would kind of alert people to petty crimes, and obviously when there are like more violent crimes you should of course call the police, those kind of situations.
I think what Jack's trying to introduce is a great thing. It's not enough necessarily, but it is a great step forward. I think every student should be able to defend themselves if the situation comes to the worst, police aren't there, they need those basic skills to be able to defend themselves, and that could potentially be life-saving or prevent a great crime. However, I also think that there's other ways of also promoting safety which need to be done as soon as possible. I'm a girl living in Rusholme, so I walk home all the time, late. It's dark, it's not safe, you get harassed, sometimes followed, and it's not a nice position to be in. So there's actually a scheme at the union for free rape alarms for students, but not many people know about this. So one of my main points in my manifesto is to promote this scheme so that every single student is aware that they can access these free rape alarms. So, because potentially that could also be, that could prevent a massive crime, and that could also just make people feel more confident when they're walking home, knowing that they have that extra form of protection. And also better street lighting, because again, like I said, when I walk home, it is dark, so if anyone wants to do anything, it's possible. So that's what I would campaign for.
I completely agree with that. I think something that the Students' Union lacks in is we have a lot of services out there. We have a lot of things that we offer, but in terms of publicising it and getting it to people for them to know about it, I think that's something that we're lacking. I think something that we need to really focus on. So we have people at the accommodation who look out for all of this kind of stuff, but students are not aware of it. So we need to really push and make sure that they know that there are people available. And I think that's something that Students' Union in every single area that we're lacking at the moment, is getting our policies and everything that we're working on, the projects, to get them out there so people know about it.
Yeah, like people said, I think it is a good scheme, and I think it's important that students have self-defence classes and that they understand how they have these skills. But at the same time, a lot of safety issues that are problems in Manchester are structural issues that we really need to get to the core of government to try and change. So I personally believe that my manifesto point about taking surveys and feeding these back to local MPs, the local council, will really, really help, especially when we see Greater Manchester Combined Authority having a lot more power over where we can put funding to try and increase safety. So yeah, I think it's a good scheme, it's important, but at the same time there's structural issues that we need to be getting to the heart of government to try and help safety in Manchester.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good scheme. I think though that it's one of many solutions. So for example, 50% of burglaries that happen are due to insecurity. So for example, leaving windows open and doors unlocked. So I think the first step is to raise awareness. So that would start with first years and then transfer through all years. Secondly, I think that we can gather the top 12 roads across Manchester. I think Manchester Homes and the Union have gathered these sort of 12 target areas. So it would be things like increasing street lights in those areas and other areas, but like roads like Brailsford Road, for example. And I think that self-defence is one of many ways. Rape alarms again, Freshers Week, really raising awareness amongst like new students who are coming into the university, and also listening to current students about issues that they face throughout their time here, and like working together on those.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, that's the second question now, and if you could answer from the right-hand side across to the left this time. There is a growing campaign at present which includes Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham and various pressure groups citywide to improve housing conditions, strengthen renting rights for students, and to challenge poor and absent landlords. How, if so, would you add to these efforts?
Yeah, I think it's something that I haven't majorly considered, and it's a really interesting point that you raise. I think that one of the things that as an executive is important to do is to be able to listen to current students and be able to work with the local community in order to reach a collaborative solution. And I think that is something that I would have to do more research in before I could fully answer the question. But it's something that I would definitely be willing to look more into if I were to be elected, and one that I would consider learning more about, for sure.
So housing is one of my top priorities this year because, yeah, it is ridiculous how much we are at risk of being exploited by landlords as students. So basically, one of the main things that I hope to do is reinvigorate the Rate My Landlord scheme run by the SU Advice Service. I think it's become evident in recent months that even Manchester student homes, some accredited landlords, are still exploiting their student tenants. So actually, we really need to reform a lot of these services that are being run because they're just not reliable. So I think doing stuff at so we have power to create a better scheme run by the SU. So that's what I hope to do. But also I think what's really forgotten as well is not just landlords but also bill companies. It's really difficult to work out your bills once you suddenly start to have to in second year, if you're living by yourself at uni. And actually now we've got these companies like Split My Bills that are actually exploiting students as well. So we've got kind of something on top of landlords. So I really want to run workshops that try and help students to sort out their bills. So yeah.
I think one of the things I really want to focus on is the one-to-one workshops. So a lot of people come to a new city, and I think there needs to be more support put in place to where they need to look to for housing, and for the pricing, if they know that are they getting the right deal for what they're paying for. Also, I think like the issue comes from first year, so people will come as freshers. That issue will happen, and then we need to prevent it there and there, so that it doesn't happen the year afterwards and the year afterwards. So I think one-to-one workshops is a good way forward in terms of for people to get support and get told as to what the best way what the best thing for them is for what they are paying.
I agree with a lot of the former points, especially the Rate My Landlord scheme. I think that is a great scheme that should be promoted even further. I would also suggest that students have a way of reporting these incidents to the SU probably, and to be able to actually check if there is a certain letting agency or certain landlords who are repeating the same incidents, and then that can be dealt with accordingly, and possibly student accredited homes. So once people have rated their homes and so forth and their landlords, then people can actually see, okay, this landlord has been accredited as being appropriate for students. And I think that's a scheme which we could try and promote to solve this problem even further.
Yeah, great. Just to build on everyone's points, so I kind of felt, I agree with Molly and yourself that we do need kind of wider accreditation. So I thought, for example, train students up to give them their agency to rate their housing themselves, so then we can pull up more rogue landlords.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, the final question now. And could I ask for answers in order? Betsy, then Huda, Molly, Rachel, and then Shamima, just to mix up a bit. Okay, the final question. What are the key local community groups and campaigns that you would engage with and support? So Betsy.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that I've been working on probably for the last couple of years is I've been working a lot on the refugee and asylum crisis. I'm a volunteer caseworker across Liverpool and Merseyside, and I've realised recently that there's been quite a lot of stigma against the asylum and refugee community, and also this branches out as well to the homeless community. They come interlinked. I think for me that I really want to get the university more involved in the local community through really easily accessible campaigns. So for example, with the British Red Cross, they have a refugee football team. I'm aware they've been looking for someone to play against, and we have loads of sports teams here, and I think that it'd be a really great idea to get events that kind of combine communities and the university, and that loads of students who maybe have never considered homelessness or refugees or asylum seekers or these kinds of issues, who are intimidated to discuss them because they don't know any facts about it, they haven't done research, to come along and find out a little bit of information about it, and to learn some more. And I do the same with sort of TED-style talks and these things. I'd like to continue a lot of the work that's been done for homelessness as well, if possible. Was who did it?
Okay, so my first point is quite similar to Betsy. In my first year, I spent the majority of my Christmas break, the Easter break and half terms actually being an independent volunteer in the refugee crisis in Greece. And once I came back, I decided to begin conversation classes where students could actually teach refugees, local Syrian refugees, majority were Syrian refugees anyway, English once a week for a term where both the refugees could engage with the student community and the student community could engage with these local refugees and break down these misconceptions on both sides. But also, I began the Boycott, Divest and Sanction campaign here at the University of Manchester, which is now one of the most active BDS campaigns in the entire world. So I work a lot with Manchester Palestine Action, local Palestinians, local Palestinian refugees, and engage them in our campaign. So I would further that, and I would further reaching out to the community, because University of Manchester is such a landmark for the entire city. So we really should be extending our campaigns to the local community, because we are a massive part of the community.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's Molly.
So I think one of the biggest local campaigns that isn't kind of represented in the University of Manchester is Citizens UK. And we don't have a group, a student group in Manchester. And I know from people that are involved outside of uni that they'd really like to set up a group. And what's great about Citizens is they focus on so many different issues that are local to Manchester. So they focus on housing, on crime, on loads of different types of things that I think is really important to students. So Citizens UK is probably one of the main campaigns that I would try and engage with, because they're underrepresented, and I think students should have a voice in Citizens, especially with, I keep saying it, but the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, we're going to have a lot more power, Citizens will, as a group. So yeah, I think Citizens UK is one of the biggest ones.
Okay, so Rachel?
Yeah, so my kind of community campaign that I would focus on is homelessness, because I'm currently on the committee for the Loves of the Streets campaign. We're working with Big Change Society here at Manchester. And it's just kind of, I'd like to collate all the volunteering that students do, and we already kind of outreach into the community. And I'd like to do that through research and perhaps an optional module here at Manchester. And perhaps greater collaboration between the university schools so that we can kind of streamline and everything and get out into the community more, as homelessness is quite a visible issue here in Manchester.
Oh, and sorry, Shamim as well.
Yeah, one of the big campaigns I really want to focus on is homelessness as well. So through the Big Change, and I think they're really unique and very different, because they don't just focus on helping them there and then, but also taking them off the streets and what happens afterwards, because a lot of us forget that. We'll walk past, we'll give them money, or we'll donate some food, but then what happens after that? It's about more long-term sustainable ways of preventing homelessness. So taking them off the streets, giving them training, and focusing on how can we get them into work, how can we start helping them to build their lives. And the Big Change is an excellent organisation that could really we could really work with to work on preventing homelessness, rather than just short-term methods of helping them just right now.
Well, thank you very much for that. I hope because we're going for the break next, we'll have time for just one or two questions.
We've got one more panel before the break.
Oh, right, okay. So can we have one, two questions to the ask the others?
One quick one.
We'll do it. Come over, bring it over.
Cheers, thanks. So obviously this role that you're going for is really important to me as the current campaigns officer. I think one of the questions I've got is that the university claims to be, one of its tenets is to be a socially responsible organisation. Does the university live up to that claim?
There we go.
So, as I mentioned before, I started the BDS campaign here on campus, and what I had done during the process is I exposed the university's investments, their partnerships, to the arms trades, to Israel's war crimes, to apartheid regimes, and I continue to do so through the campaign. And what I have found is that the university invests millions in companies such as Caterpillar, who supply the armoured bulldozers for the Israeli army to demolish Palestinian homes, making Palestinians homeless, a complete violation of international law, documented by UN and Human Rights Watch groups, that this is human rights abuses. This violates their policy, which says they can't invest in human rights violations. So unless they don't consider Palestinians as humans, then this is a clear violation. One more point. 20 seconds. They also have a partnership with Technion. Technion is based in Israel. They are the leaders of the research and development for the Israeli army, specifically Elbit Systems, Israel's largest private security firm, who openly admit to testing their weapons on Palestinian civilians. Palestinian civilians in Gaza, where the population is majority children, and our university is actively collaborating with them. They cannot consider themselves as socially responsible while literally investing in murder.
Thank you. Any other responses to that? Keep them quite short.
Yeah, so yeah, I've been part of the BDS campaign as well since its inception, really, so I agree with everything Huda said. But also, Fossil Free UK is a big campaign in Manchester. The university, it's not just about its investments in war, it's also about its investments in fossil fuels. Sorry, in fossil fuels. I'm a little bit nervous. Yes, it's about their investment in fossil fuels as well, so we really need to be working on that as well. The university is not socially responsible, no it isn't, and as the Students' Union we should be pulling the university up on that, and I will lobby the university for change on this.
Yeah, I'll be really quick, I promise. Yeah, basically what Molly said, I don't think we'd be very pioneering to get on with divest from fossil fuels because it's not like we'd be the first university to do it, and I find it outstanding from having done recent research that we aren't on that. Also, I think it's really interesting, the SU obviously does have a responsibility to put the uni up on that, but I'd also like to open the table to students, the majority of students who have no idea what BDS stands for, what divest from fossil fuels mean. I think we can start to make these more accessible kind of terminologies, and yeah, get the student population on board to put pressure on the university to live up to this social responsibility.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark and I'm the chair for the election of Liberation and Access Officer. So first of all, who's in the house? I would now like to invite the candidates to introduce themselves a bit and give a brief account of their manifesto points.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hohey. I'm running a paper-free campaign, so you won't get a leaflet. I am running for this post because I am an Access student, and as an Access student, I have also wear many hats, so I live away from the university campus, I'm a parent, I'm a mature student, and throughout my time studying here, I think parent students, which makes up about 8% of the undergraduate body, are an invisible and underrepresented across the university. Things like we don't get timetables until a week after the semester starts, so you can't arrange childcare, and various other things. I also think that as over the age of 27, I'm being diplomatic, I'm unable to buy travel passes, concessionary travel passes, which means that we can't take benefit from the student union. So I was really interested in the question earlier about bus passes because we can't even buy them. So anyway, that's about it. But I am here to support anybody because throughout my voluntary work and things that I do already, I'm really into encouraging everybody to encourage themselves as far as they can go and to be able to access all the opportunities that are available to us at the University of Manchester.
Hi, I'm Sarah Khan. I guess a huge part of the reason why I'm running for the Liberation and Access position is because liberation and access are very personal issues for me. I personally am a Pakistani Muslim woman. I have mental health issues and I also identify as queer. So I have a lot of personal experience with feeling like certain aspects of my education aren't accessible to me. And I've talked to a lot of people like me, people from minority ethnic backgrounds, LGBT plus people, students of faith who for various reasons don't feel like this campus gives them space. So a lot of my manifesto points approach the issue of access from different angles. Some of the things that I would like to do are expand prayer spaces across campus, improve diversity and inclusion training for staff. Because, like, sadly, during my time as BME officer at the Students' Union last year, I heard many reports of students of faith being harassed for praying on campus, which is just not on. I also completely agree with what my fellow candidate said about the lack of accessibility for student parents, for student carers as well. And I think that lobbying for priority access, to timetables and for improved childcare provision would be one of my priorities as well. I have a few other ideas, but I can't go on about them forever, sadly. So please do read my manifesto if you get a chance.
Great, thank you. So now we'll move on to some specific questions. Given the broad remit of this role, what are the key opportunities of collaboration with other executive officers?
As I mentioned earlier, the conversation about continuing the campaign for transport, I think that's really important. I'm also really keen to work with anybody who's looking at campaigning, because there doesn't seem to be that much of a voice. I know people have tried, and there was a feedback session, I think, last week organised by the previous exec officers who arranged some brilliant stuff, but sadly it was on a Wednesday afternoon during half term, and my children were off, so I couldn't access that, even if I'd wanted to. And if I'd brought them, nobody would have been able to access that. So I think that there's great opportunities to collaborate with just about every single member of every single exec office, because everything everyone has spoken about, community campaigns, that kind of thing, is stuff that I've experienced in and things that I'm really passionate about. So I'm keen to collaborate with everybody and have got a track record of doing various different projects and being really successful in them positively for every part of the community. So I'm really keen to extend that.
Yeah, I totally agree with the point about transport. I'd add on to that for me, a big access when it comes, a big priority when it comes to access, sorry, I'm so tired, is actually would have an overlap with the campaign's community and citizenship position and the education position. I think that sometimes something that people overlook in this role is that actually one of the biggest barriers to people's access to education is financial in nature. I personally strongly believe that education should be a public good and should be free, and that campaigning for free education would be one of my priorities. That's an area of overlap with exec officers. And also the international students officer, because I feel like there's a lot of overlap with a particular group that I represent, which is obviously students of colour. A lot of them come from, like certain experiences where they've never actually experienced racism before. When I was BME officer last year, I talked to many students who didn't know how to deal with that because they'd never lived in a majority white country. So I would definitely love to work with the international officer on that issue as well.
Thank you. So the next question would be, the Mancunian reported in October that many Muslim students think there's an adequate space for prayer on campus, and some have reported being harassed while doing so. Other groups such as the Jewish student community have reflected similar issues, saying they do not always feel safe on campus. What would you do to improve this situation?
I think there needs to be, as somebody said earlier, one of the campaigns was there's no space. Somebody who's standing for GenSec, we don't know where the space is. I think that people's faiths and beliefs should be respected, obviously, right across campus, and that we must do everything we can as a students' union to ensure that those people who wish to practice their faith don't feel marginalised and aren't excluded because there physically isn't any space, that they're having to take themselves off campus or hide away. I think that there was a campaign a while ago, a project that ran a mosque to have iftar to celebrate that, and it was very open, and I thought that was fantastic in terms of sharing faith with other people on campus. I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I think something like that is something that we should definitely look towards doing. But there's no reason why we couldn't look at some kind of timetabling or specifically bringing it out to the fore.
I absolutely agree with those points. Like at the moment, like the experience as a student who prays is that there's very limited space to do so. The new refurbished prayer space here in the Union is great. Like it's really well equipped and you know, with prayer mats and books from various faiths and so forth. And I would like to see spaces that look like that in more buildings across campus. I conducted the research that fed into the Mancunian article on the experiences of students of faith when I was BME officer, and when a lot of people were talking to me about their experiences personally, I had some people tell me that a real issue for them is that there is no time to go to the Union or to go to McDougall's and pray and then get back to lectures. So I think that having more of these spaces is a very tangible solution to that problem. I think that something that would overlap with the campaign's community and citizenship officer is doing work on the Open Iftar, the Ramadan tent project that has been conducted for the last 2 years, and looking into doing that with other communities like the Jewish community and Christian communities, because it really fosters an understanding and a sense of community that, you know, people make so many presuppositions about people of faith that when you come together and do something as simple as share a meal really break down. So yeah, I think that's how I would tackle that issue.
Thank you. So next we would like to ask you about the Are You Coming Up Students Union Club. So the current diversity officer has created this. Are You Coming Up Students Union Club night in collaboration with the LGBTQ society. So in what way will you further promote LGBTQ plus causes? Testing.
I'm really excited about tonight's club night. I think it's really cool to see the union putting more into LGBT History Month, which they really have done this year. One thing that started this year as well is that we now have our first ever Students' Union LGBTQ and trans committees. As Liberation and Access Officer, if elected, I would be super excited to work with them on furthering LGBTQ rights here in Manchester. I think specific things that I would focus on is that myself and a lot of others have a lot of issues with safety in the gay village, which, you know, is really not on because that is supposed to be a safe space for us, but it's just not inclusive enough for trans people or people of colour or disabled people. I think there's one venue in the gay village that's physically accessible, wheelchair accessible, which again is not on. So I think that working in the community to make the village a more inclusive space would be a real priority of mine. And diversifying the curriculum would be another big one for me in terms of pushing LGBTQ plus rights, because at the moment in my own course I do English literature. I think the mic is turned off, but I'm loud enough. Okay. Because at the moment, in my own course, a lot of the material that we're taught is certainly not as trans inclusive as it could be, and a lot of the language around gender is out of date. This can make a lot of trans students that I've spoken to feel really unsafe. A lot of us who are cis don't necessarily think about it, but something as simple as someone saying "ladies and gentlemen" instead of "people" really affects how safe a trans person feels. So diversifying the curriculum and having that culture change around the language of gender is something that I really want to push.
I have to say, I think my night clubbing days are beyond me, but I think it's great. We've got something called Are You Coming Out? I would if elected, work really closely with the experts within the field of LGBT, the reps, with the organising committee, and obviously be supportive, because I am and have always been an ally of that community.
Okay, so thank you very much for everything. So now we'll move on to a short break before the next.
We have time for one question. You shout really loud. One person. Do you want to go? Give it like really loud.
I just wanted to mention one thing where we mentioned that faith groups don't feel they're recognized or represented. So one thing the community officer did last year was put in a faith committee which represented each faith. So there was a faith rep for each faith, and it was meant to happen this year as well, but it just didn't happen with the election that was on. Would you revive that again for the coming year if you're elected?
Of course, I don't profess to be an expert in any specific faith, and I think the experts within those faiths are the people who can inform and educate me, and I can support them in order to spread that message and support them to engage with the university in order to fight for things like the rooms as Sarah was talking about, and the ability to be open and touches.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add on to that, I believe that a year or two ago that was passed into policy by our student senate, so it is something that our students want, that we would democratically be mandated to do as your exec, so absolutely.
Hi, I'm Deej. I'm currently the Campaigns and Citizenship Officer. I am standing to be a welfare officer based on my three key points of my manifesto are health, which encompasses physical, sexual and mental health. I think that we need to be doing a lot more as a university and a lot more as a students' union. It's also going about safety. Student safety is a real key. Well, I think one of the things which has been shown this year is that a lot of students have been felt unsafe, whether it be of fear of sexual violence, fear of hate crime, fear of robbery, fear of burglary, and again there's a lot more that we can be doing. Lastly, I want to concentrate on our rights, where I think a lot of students, when it comes to student welfare, it becomes a lot more holistic than people may immediately understand. How can you feel secure? How can you feel like you've got good well-being if you're not sure about how your housing is, if you're not sure about your benefits, if you're not sure that you're going to get decent childcare? I think as the welfare officer, I think the role needs to be, we really need to have a look at what we're doing. So that's me. I've worked in social care for 10 years, it's the best part of 10 years, working with homelessness, mental health, drugs, and yeah, so that's me.
Hello, my name is Octavian. I'm a placement year computer science student. My main idea in my manifesto is to implement a program called What Do I Do Now? And it's basically just a mashup in between Participate and Society's Fair. So basically, after the Society's Fair, you get into a society, and a few months after, maybe you resign, right? What Do I Do Now program helps you get into a different society or into the same society back again, right? And do something with your life, be more active about it, right? And my motto is Mens sana in corpore sano, sound, which means, for you guys that you don't know, it means a sound of mind and a sound of body. That's why I sound. Thank you.
Okay, so our first question is, the magazine reported in October that many students felt dissatisfied with the services provided by the University Counselling Service. It has also been reported that demand for mental health services in UK universities has increased by 68% in the last 7 years. What would you do to help improve the condition of students' mental well-being?
Okay, so I think this is a really massively important thing, and I think there's some very basic things that we're not doing as a student union which shouldn't be that difficult to implement. For example, we've got in Manchester, at the University of Manchester, we've got 40,000 students, yeah? In the centre of Manchester, we've got 42nd Street, which is one of the best mental health organisations for under 25s in the country. I feel that we should invite the people from services like 42nd Street into the Students' Union to have like triage sessions so we can figure out what's happening with students right on campus. Because I think that when students come from other areas of the country, even coming from abroad, they come to the university, they have so many different issues, whether it be feeling of So basically, bring services into the SU and make them very more easily accessible and do signposting that way.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with what he said, and I also want to like add onto it, and well, more like I'm trying to tackle more the situations that bring mental health issues, not like trying to figure out how to deal with the mental problem afterwards, because there are a lot of things that students don't know about. In general, mental health, in general, what mental health issues are. If you have or not a mental issue, and if like I could tackle these situations beforehand, it will be less stressful for the student, and it will be less information basically for the student to go through, and less time wasted.
Okay, moving on to the second question. How do you intend to work with external bodies and companies to improve students' mental health, or just health in general? I'll start with you this time. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so how do you intend to work with external bodies and companies to improve students' health?
Well, I already emailed Manchester Mind, but they've not replied to me yet, which is a bit worrying. Like one of the biggest institutions in Manchester that deals with student mental health issues is not replying on the first day. But still, I'm trying to gather as much information possible because in my opinion, that's what the university lacks right now, information about mental health problems in general related to students, and then afterwards, how should that be used towards some programs that might help students?
Okay, so like as I mentioned before, I've had a wealth of experience of working in the sector. So we work using my contacts, my already built relationships with 42nd Street, with Eclipse in People's Drug Service, with Great Manchester Housing Action, to ensure that this support is there. And also be looking at organisations that we've got in the Students' Union, so like the Open Mind Network, who are piloting a really fantastic peer support scheme. If we've got this support, we need to be looking externally to see what's there. We also need to be looking internally. We also need to be going to the NUS Women's Campaign, NUS Black Students Campaign, NUS Trans Campaign to see what is happening to our liberation roles, to people who have got protected characteristics. If an international student is feeling completely isolated and they don't see anybody who looks like them in the counselling service, then we're doing something wrong. And we can be doing something about that by inviting people in. I think we've got a responsibility to do that, and I think it's just basic common sense.
Thank you. And the final question. So the last meeting of the Student Union Senate voted by 85% to lobby the Year Abroad Office to improve support for students returning from the year abroad. What extra measures would you suggest the office implement?
So I think one of the things which I'm going to be completely honest, I am not an expert in this field, and I think that what we need to be doing is we need to be going to the students who've had a year abroad and say, what are the issues which you faced? Because who am I as somebody who's not experienced this to say this is what you need. However, we've got through our Senate subcommittees, we've got through our really diverse student population, people who've gone through this. So what I would be doing is I would be going to students who've had a year abroad and conducting some qualitative research and say, what is it that we need? And then we'll be lobbying with working with and lobbying the university to make sure that these things are provided. Like my course was basically, I never got farther than Sackville Street, so I'm not an expert, but I will definitely feel that we need to, as an exec team, as has been mentioned earlier when it came to the GenSec candidates, we need to be better at listening.
Yeah, definitely we need way more feedback on all these situations, and especially in my opinion, we need a lot more feedback throughout the year, not just like at the end of the year when the students came back home, right? Because when a situation happens to you, you realize it, you feel bad or good about it, you need to feedback it on the spot, on the moment, right? Because you could forget about it, like it could affect you and like step by step, and I don't know, have a long-term effect on you. That's what I want to say.
Okay, so we've got enough time for one more question from the audience. So does anyone have a question? No? Oh, okay.
You mentioned it was about better cohesion between what the executive is doing now to incorporate policies. What more could be done specifically then? Obviously you're in the team now. Would there be more workshops, or what would you be trying to do?
So can you ask me the beginning of the question? Sorry, I've got quite bad hearing.
Sorry, you said at the start it was about the exec team needing to be more transparent with what they were doing to that thing. What specifically would you aim to introduce?
Okay, so as we mentioned before, like the student union has historically had a bit of a problem with communicating what we do. And I think that we need to be like looking at that, whether it be looking at how we engage with our communications team, looking at how we engage with social media, looking at our relationship with the media group. I think that we've got a lot of resources available to us, but we've not been working with them very well. So what I would be doing, I think it's on all of us as an exec team actually. So that if elected, I think that we should have a major review over the summer about what we do. So when it comes to new students starting in September or students returning, that we're on it from the start. Because honestly, like I know that I've not been as good at communicating as I could have been, and I know that Riddy, for example, has been fantastic. So I think we need to be going to Riddy going, "What's your magic?" basically.
I know. I think the question was directed towards Kevin. How I could improve communications, you said? Sorry, you from back there.
Yeah, just to let the exec team know what they actually should be implementing.
Oh, right. Well, I would actually add to a point that was said before by education candidates, that there should be a platform where you can like feedback a lot more on what you're doing throughout the year as a student. Because like even though you've got all these Facebook groups and forums, and you can come, of course, to the Students' Union to feedback on what you've experienced, but that's a long way from like this start of the situation itself. You should be able to do it like straight afterwards. Yeah.
Also talk to societies.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Kane and I'll be chairing the women's panel. If our panel would like to introduce themselves to start off.
Hello, I'm Smeetal Kalundar and I'm a postgrad student studying chemical engineering. So I've applied for this role because I'm running for this role because I'm a women's coordinator in Whitworth Park RA, and I can actually address the women's issues and their demands over there. So basically my manifesto points are organizing a women's week, where we can celebrate women, have networking events between men and women, and also like stop sexual harassment and mental and sexual health. So yeah. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arundhati Suman, and I'm a postgrad as well. And I come from a country where we believe that it is okay to be oppressed, and it's okay to be inferior, and to be a good girl. That you have to like conform to many of the social norms like that. So like ever since I was small, I was raised in a way that I used to believe that it was alright to live in such a way. But then I grew up, and then I started working for women's rights from a very young age. And I was a women's cell coordinator of my undergraduate degree, and I worked for women in engineering all through my engineering degree in my undergrad. I worked for the upliftment of the tribal people in my state, and currently I work for the Residents Association in Oak House, and I work for the Women's Rugby team of the University of Manchester as well. And I am standing in the election because I know I can do more. And
We'll just try and keep our answers as quick as possible.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's it, yeah.
Hi guys, my name's Sarah, I'm the current Women's Officer, and this year has been such a big year for the university to do a lot more to combat sexual harassment on campus. One of the main reasons why I decided to rerun was because throughout the year I've been giving feedback to the university about students going through the sexual harassment disciplinary procedure and the amount of problems that they faced going through that. And this year the university have decided to reform regulation on which concerns sexual harassment. And the reason why I wanted to rerun is because I wanted to be there for those talks, I wanted to be there for those negotiations. We need a strong student leader to sit there on the table and speak for students. It's completely unacceptable that there are people sitting on sexual harassment panels which aren't even trained, and there are people going through these procedures, and it takes as much as at least 6 months. You've graduated by the time some of these cases have reached to hearings and panels. There needs to be a strong student leader to sit there through those negotiations, and that's why I decided to rerun, because I wanted to be there, use my experience, use the contacts that I've built through the university. I know how things work, and I wanted to be there to make a real change in this area.
Thank you. So the first of our set questions concerns the Me Too campaign. So this year, the Me Too campaign has managed to engage millions of women in highlighting the issue of sexual harassment. How would you incorporate the ideas that it's brought up into your work on campus?
There should be meet and greet events so that we can actually know what women are facing, problems, and then we can overlook the problems and find solutions.
One good thing about the Me Too campaign is that we all get to know that we are not the only ones. So the thing is, like, more than just saying that Me Too, we should be like in the stage where we are really able to talk to each other that I have been sexually molested, and that too not even once, like many times. So we should be having a really safe and very friendly environment around us where we are actually able to say that it's all right. We've all been there.
So the Me Too campaign is something which I have been so involved in. Actually, when I did Reclaim the Night this year, I made it the face of the campaign. One of the t-shirts actually says Me Too. So it was something that I brought to the forefront of the campaign, and it's things like this. As the Women's Officer, we take charge of so many campaigns in the Students' Union, and Reclaim the Night has such a big reach, and something as important as Me Too is something that should be brought to the forefront of these campaigns. We as students should be championing causes like this, and using Reclaim the Night, having the hashtag all over the posters, having it as one of the official t-shirts, which were sold out. But having it as one of the, first time ever, but having it as one of the official t-shirts, giving it the exposure that it deserves is something that we should be doing as exec officers, something that we should be looking at what students are engaging with on social media and incorporating that into our campaigns.
Thank you, and that leads very nicely into our next question. Although it remains a significant event on the union campaigning calendar, it is estimated that attendance at Reclaim the Night fell from 2,500 people last year to 2,000 people this year. What would you do to invigorate the campaign? And this time we'll start Sarah.
I think one of the main things about being exec is that you should be able to be transparent about things. And I'm not afraid to criticize the union, and the union does so many things right, but there's a lot of things that the union does wrong as well. This year with Reclaim the Night, I found that it's not been student-led as I previously thought it would be. When Reclaim the Night was at its best, when Jess, 2 women's officers before me, took on Reclaim the Night, she did everything on her own. She took responsibility. She led that campaign. This year, when I came into office and I started to go on and go to these meetings, I found that things were already being done. There wasn't a lot of student input. Things like having a Snapchat filter had to go through 3 stages of management, which is completely unacceptable. One of my main points of my manifesto is to make Reclaim the Night student-led again. The reason that we're not getting engagement is because we're not listening to students and we're not using the elected student who is in charge of taking care of these campaigns. We're not using them to effect real change. One of my main manifesto points is to make Reclaim the Night, give it back to the women's officer, give the women's officer full control of the campaign and make it as student-led as possible. We can't keep having the same thing every single year and expecting different results. There needs to be change and it needs to move with the times. So that's one of the main things that I will do this year, if elected.
What I wanted to say is that not many people who are new to the campus knew about the Reclaim the Night thing, so we need more publicity in that. So the people who campaigned last year, they're the ones who wanted to do it this year as well, so they were now, because I am new to the campus, I came only in last September, so not many of my friends knew about the campaign, so the one thing that we have to do is more publicity from the union.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Social media campaigning should be the main motto. And Reclaim the Night, women should come and they should actually tell their problems. They should actually stand up for them. So that's the main issue.
Thank you very much. And our final question is, poor body image and the lack of body positivity is a big issue for young women. How will you work to promote positive body image around campus?
One of my top 3 priorities is spreading body positivity and fighting bullying based on body shaming in the campus. So one thing that we all know is that we are easily influenced by what we see. So what we can do is whenever I open my Facebook, all I see is people complaining about how insecure they are deep inside. They may be smart women, they may be knowing a lot of things, they may be educated, but it all depends on what the whole world influences them to be. So what we can see is that we can influence people by making the campus a more friendly towards all kinds of body shapes and all women of all color. So we can spread positivity among ourselves. We can spread it by making even posters all around us, saying that we are all equal, we are all beautiful.
So starting a body positivity campaign was one of the main things on my manifesto, and it's something that I'm working on this semester. But one of the main things that the union really needs to do is be more visible. It needs to be more visible with its campaigns. For example, with Reclaim the Night this year, when we were selling the t-shirts, it's not something that I just wanted to put online. I wanted to release a video about it. I wanted people to see it when they walk past the union. I wanted people to see it when they come into the shop. And the models that came through to model the t-shirts, they were all different shapes, sizes, genders, sexualities. And a lot of people came to me and said to me that it's so nice to see women of colour finally being represented at the union. It's something that whenever you log on to the union website, whenever the union releases a video, it should be diverse, it should be representative. Even things with the union shop where we sell hoodies and t-shirts, it shouldn't just be modelled by the same skinny white model. There should be a diverse range of imagery and visual representation on the union website, because if we're going to promote that kind of diversity and that kind of body positivity, we need to start with our website, we need to start with how we're representing ourselves.
Inclusivity of all beautiful kinds is the main motto of this campaign.
Thank you very much. Do we have time for one audience question?
So I've been recently made aware that funding for the women's campaign has been limited this year.
how, as women's officer, if elected, will you either use the limited funds to their maximum capacity or lobby for greater funding and more access to funding for women's campaigns in the future?
We can actually combine with all the university halls of accommodation, RAs, because they also get some funds from the SU. So not only the union women's officer has to work on this, because working with all the women's coordinators and women officer would actually create a team and can solve the problems from the interior levels. And we can get more funds, we can combine each other, so yeah.
One thing we can do is that women, like all officers can like incorporate into working for women. So considering international officer diversity, like everyone. So because 50% would be women, like in all kinds of societies. So if we incorporate funds from all clubs and societies in the campus, we can pretty much make a very good fund for to support all the women.
One of the main things that I've learned when working as women's officer this year is that the funding is there for campaigns, the funding is there for events and projects, and the union is more than happy to put money into campaigns such as Reclaim the Night. The issue that I've found is that there's a budget there, but the women's office is not getting a say in how that is spent. There is no sort of student-led action or control about what we can do with that budget and how we can utilise it to its maximum potential. For example, things like having a Snapchat filter at Reclaim the Night, that's something that wasn't able to be done this year because we weren't able to have access to that kind of funding or that kind of budget, even though it was there. So one of the main things that I'm saying in my manifesto, we need to make things student-led again. We need to have especially elected officers, having more of a say in how campaigns are run, how campaign budget is spent. And like I said, the union is so fantastic in giving students, like if there's no money for something, they'll find it from somewhere. But the students need to have a say. They need to lead on how budget is spent. They need to have more responsibility because, and as an exec officer, you're not just there to give ideas. You're not just there to be the face of things. It's time we took more responsibility into our own hands and acted like event managers, because that's essentially what we're at. We're coordinating campaigns. We're coordinating events. So to answer your question, the funding is there, but it just needs to be more student-led in how it's spent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the women's panel.
I'm Ethan, I'm chairing the final two panels, so thank you for sticking with us. We've only got two left, and I'm sure you'll all be interested to hear from the international students panel. We're going to start though. I'd just like you to introduce yourselves and answer our first question, which is, in your opinion, what are the key issues facing international students?
I'm Chi Hui. So I think the first issue that internationals they are facing is that they don't feel represented enough in this university. This university is so big and we claim that we are one of the best universities with so many internationals, but we don't feel represented enough. I'm Malaysian. I'm lucky enough to have a big Malaysian community here, but a lot of smaller communities like South African, those kind of societies, they're not given recognition enough because they don't have enough members. So I feel like we need to recognize this and give them more promotion, give them more recognition instead of just let them run the society on their own. We need to promote and help them grow their society instead of just leaving them as it is.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Riddhi Vishwanathan, your current diversity officer and an international student. And I'm running in this election to be re-elected as the international students officer. Last year during my term, I must say that we have increased engagement with international students. The very fact that we lobbied and successfully got this very position of a full-time international students officer to exist, and also opened up jobs for international students within the union, which has never been existent and has never been possible in the union before. However, being in this role for a year has alerted me to a number of other scenarios faced by international students which I wasn't aware about, which is the main reason for me to rerun. One of them was mental health struggles faced by international students. The diversity of counselors in this university needs to be really changed, and we need to make sure that we have somebody to talk to that we can identify ourselves as. And I have personally been dragged into situations where I've seen students being deported, where we had to personally, not just at the union level or the university level, but at a national level, lobby and give them an asylum seeker or a refugee status. And for me, it's a very broad question when you ask what are the key issues facing international students, because of course, post-study work visas, employment, educational experience, tuition fee. There are a number of issues, but tuition fee has been on the rise, and Manchester charges the highest tuition fee for international students on placement. So my priority would be lobbying and getting that reduced.
Hi, I'm Carla Lopez. I'm Mexican. My three priorities very quickly for my campaign are improve communication, accountability, and well, the other is improve opportunities after graduation, either for work or other sort of collaboration with the UK. And the third one is inclusiveness, which is a very broad term, but I want to, apart from these, to answer the question. I think that the problem is actually in the way that you put it, the question, what is the issue with international students? As if you could put them all in the same brush. When you're talking about not only people from different places, but also that are doing different courses, the most important presence of international students are on postgraduates. And you can absolutely not think that they have the same experience as undergraduates. Talking about postgraduates, as I said, the most important presence of internationals are there. The master students, for instance, are only here for a year. So in the point of accountability, you have to really improve the channels of communications, because if you only have a year to do everything, you have to adapt very quickly. You have to, well, enjoy what Manchester has to offer, and also, well, get your degree done. And I think that there should be a change in approach, because right now it's about the students approaching the university instead of the university doing more to approach the students. So I think that yes, improving communication and doing more effective the work would be a good.
Thank you very much. And now to our second question. As has been highlighted by a couple of candidates, Manchester University currently has some of the highest tuition fees for any UK university for international students. How exactly would you go around tackling this issue? If we start at the far end, we'll go down.
One of the things that is great about the student union, because I hate it, I love it. I think it's its roots of how contested was and how campaigns can really reach and change policies. So I think that we should absolutely do that. We should absolutely campaign for not only not increasing tuition fees, but they should be, if not reduced, we should guarantee the students that the money that they're paying for, it's really, I mean, it's worth it. With the strike, and this is one of the main reasons for me to run, it was like a big slap on the face, because you have people coming from places like, for me, our currencies are just equal to dust. We have, I don't know, maybe got a scholarship. We competed with half of our entire country, with very talented people. Maybe we got a huge loan that we have to pay in 30 years or something similar. And then
as quickly as possible.
Oh yes, and then what you find is, you're probably not going to have classes for 3 weeks. Excuse me. So yes, I think that we should probably campaign to solve this problem from the government, right?
Yes, as highlighted by you, Manchester University is one of the very few universities, even in the Russell Group, which charges its international students a wholesome lot of money, but doesn't necessarily give the exact experience that you need to get out of that money. Be it the UCU strikes, being compensated for lectures, or even the very fact of charging 50% of tuition fee for international students on placement, that needs to change, because all the Russell Group universities and even the Oxbridge community charges their international students on placement only 20 to to a maximum of 25%, versus Manchester University charges its students 50%. Being in the role has given me a little bit of an advantage where I have done some research into it and have put forward a proposal research based on all the universities that charge the tuition fee for international students. I've also questioned the Senate on the basis and the parameters under which this tuition fee is charged. If re-elected, I promise to have a student-led committee leading on international tuition fee review and promise to make sure that the percentage of 50% charge on placement year students is definitely reduced and is equal to other Russell Group universities or even lesser. Thank you.
Tuition fee is always mentioned by all the community, not just internationals, but also home students. It is true, like for internationals, they charge us more than £18,000 for just a year, while home students £9,000. Both are equally a lot, but one thing we can change at the moment is that we need to increase the amount of scholarships. Like for an international, you see the scholarship website, there's not a lot for us to actually get a scholarship, and it's really difficult. It's like one place for how many internationals here? Like home students, they can get loans, we can't get loans. There's only scholarship that we can get, and that's the only way we can actually reduce the tuition fee. And then, like Really said, yes, that's a very good point. They're saying that we need to form a student committee in order to actually review the tuition fee, because this is really high. And then, yeah, that's what I think about. We need to get more scholarships at the moment.
Thank you very much to our three candidates, and I'm conscious of time, so we'll have a very quick question to finish. In no more than 30 seconds, could you please just tell us what you would imagine to be a successful year in sort of 30 seconds? How do you envisage it at the end of the year?
So, because the Students' Union is so big, but as an international, I don't really come to the Students' Union that often because I don't feel included. So I think that I'm going to work with all the international societies here to actually make the Students' Union more accessible to international students, to bring in the numbers of international students that will actually connect with its Students' Union instead of just numbers. Now we care about communication and connection instead of just numbers.
To me, a very successful year is making your Students' Union a home for millions of international students that come this year and empowering every single international student as a leader. And for me personally, this year, I believe it has been a success, seeing that so many candidates have put themselves forward to this very position, with being one of the most highly contested positions. So, empowering international student leaders and creating Manchester Students' Union as a home for them is my dream.
I think for me would be to do more inclusive the term inclusiveness, as ironic as that sounds. I think that we should not only think about, of course, that international is about different countries, about different cultures, but how we operate on this. For example, for me, a successful year would be more professors, more lecturers, more sensible about the differences on learning from different students. Of course, to use the technologies that we have available for international students to adequate to this. And okay,
Due to unfortunately constraints of time, we're only going to have a chance for 2 questions, and also the fact that we've got a few more candidates today. So again, I'd like you to introduce yourselves, candidates, and answer the first question. You'll have a minute to do both. Would you keep or end Pangea? And if you kept it, what would you do to improve it? But if you decided to scrap it, would you introduce a replacement event, and what would that look like? So introduce yourself and answer that question, please.
Hi guys, my name's Ants, and I've been heavily immersed in extracurricular and societies in the AU and the SU since the first year. My slogan is "And no mountain high enough," and so yeah, I'm a massive advocate of university life being a lot more than just academia. So would I keep Pangea? Would I not? Of course I'd keep Pangea. Pangea is very close to my heart, and the whole idea of Pangea is a student-run festival which is the biggest in Europe. Now all I'm saying is I personally feel that the novelty of Pangea has slowly decreased over the years due to it being too available. So I'd still keep it there, but I'd also I'd explore the idea of opening up a 5th stage dedicated to live music performances outside. This would also help integrate people who would not normally be able to go to it, such as disabled students and other members of the student community.
Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm currently completing my 4th year at Manchester University, whereas I took a placement year actually here, where I was a events management intern at Manchester Academy. So I've had a lot of experience in events and such, and I've actually been working on Pangea for every single one while I've been in my 4 years here, apart from my first one, which is where I fell in love with it. In my first week in Manchester, we had this massive event that was student run, and it was just for students. It was the largest student festival in Europe, and it really just kind of gave the essence of what my time at university was going to be, and I think that's really important to keep up. So I would definitely keep Pangea. I mean, I've been on the committee now for 3 years. What I think needs to happen though is I think we need to focus more on what the students actually want from it. I think now we have this idea on what it should be, but that might not be what the students now want it to be, so I think we need to work on that.
Hello, I'm Lizzie. I'm running under the slogan, get Lizzie, vote Lizzie, hence the B's. I'm going to B for a week, I'm not just mental. Yeah, absolutely we need to keep Pangea. It's, like the other candidates said, it's one of the most important events of the year. I think to do that I want to reintroduce Pangea and make it more accessible to disabled students and international students and also student parents and carers. I think there's still some party in those guys. And I also want to try and promote the amazing student talent on campus. So I think there's definitely an argument for getting people to do their own thing at Pangea.
Hi, good night everyone. I'm Romaine Williams and I'm running for the position as these guys. My main reason for running for this position was because a lot of students were telling me that as student parents, they aren't feeling included. And I believe that coming to the university is about a process and is about feeling included. Students that aren't alcoholic drinkers are feeling that they're not included in this. So definitely I will keep Pangea. However, I will try to reform it to include everyone in it. Not only student parents alone, but non-alcoholic drinkers and everybody, so that they could feel included as well.
Hello, I'm Rosa Simone, and I've been involved in a range of activities while at the university, including being part of the Oak House RA, and being part of Sexpression, which aim to empower and educate people when it comes to sex and relationships, and a part of the student media group. So I've gained a vast knowledge of the SU and how that works. My main manifesto points include working on careers, building up upon the Student Leadership Conference and encouraging collaboration and inclusivity, and encourage a dialogue with student media. I definitely think we should keep Pangea, and I completely agree with Lizzie as well with bringing back Pangea. And I think that one of the main problems with it this year was tickets underselling, and so we need to get outreach out there and ask what students want from Pangea as well. Yeah, sure. Ask what students want from Pangea.
Hello everyone, my name is Naman Ahmed and I'm an international student here doing postgrad. So I'm studying for the activity and development officer. So my main priority for the manifesto is personality and sports development, uniting all the international students and societies already existing in the university and maximize the volunteering opportunity. For Pangea, I would like to, it will happen this year, but I think we should organize a festival by engaging all the existing society as well. So to make it more better for the society and Pangea Festival. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just keep the microphone down at that end. So the final question for tonight is, how would you build the relationship between the SU and student media? So we'll come back this way and then we'll wrap up.
For activity and development, the main the backup is all the societies in the university. So I think there are so many societies in the university which exist only. They don't actually organize. So I will help them to engage with other society or increase the connectivity between other society to organize events. There are many reasons that they don't get organized events because of lack of space or lack of team member, lack of student, lack of activeness in the lack of involvement in the university. So I can help them to engage with other active society and to increase the connectivity and link with other media people.
And being part of student media this year and being engaged with it throughout my time at university, I've seen that friction between the exec and student media, and I think that just encouraging a dialogue between them, finding where you have common ground, and working with them with student outreach and event promotion is really important. So you're constantly engaging with student media on a regular basis, because there are plenty of events that they promote each and every week, and just being a part of that process is really important.
I would definitely recommend societies. Sorry. I would definitely recommend that diversity societies and even part-time officers have like a nightly forum or a weekly forum with the media. Because one of the things I realized as BME officer was that we didn't feel as if we were a part of the union, even though we were part-time officers, and we didn't even feel like we were a part of the school, even though we were part-time officers. So I would highly recommend part-time officers, society leads, and everyone having contact with the media, probably having a radio program on a weekly basis, putting out ideas and getting on to students, so that students could feel a part of the student union, and so that they could understand that the student media is actually there. Because I didn't even know that the student media was this impressive till I got here tonight. And then I realized that it's a whole new bracket of people, that I haven't met. And I have been part-time officer for probably 6 months, and I haven't met the student media. So I think that when I become exec, I will ensure that part-time officers and societies are engaged with the student media, so that we can bridge the gap between the student union, the student media, and the university. Thank you.
Yeah, there's definitely been a relatively big opposition between the exec team and the student media in the past years. And I heard the other day that one of the reasons is because there's just not enough communication. You know, we need to be on the ground listening to what student media want. We need to be supporting them. One of the points in my manifesto is to try and increase the outreach of student media. You know, by Shelburne and Mancunian in other places around the city. And I think that's a really important job for the exec team to do. Yeah.
So yeah, student media is also one of my main points in my manifesto. I think that student media, we've got such great facilities here, and it seems such a shame that they're not being utilised more. Whether students are using it as a bit of part-time fun or are actually really interested to go into it as a career, I think it's very important to utilise what we have, and the time that you spend on it is so fun for you, or it's so going to be such a big part of your future that we really need to make the most of that. And we've got so many media companies around. Like, one of my main points is to make partnerships with those to get you experience or days out in those sort of companies to get your experience again. So if that is your career path, then you've got a chance to do that. And also, as we've got Pangea and the Academy here, we've got special guests coming along every week, all the time. And one of my other main points of my manifesto is to try my best to get interviews with those for the radio and Fuse TV.
So student media is incredibly important in the university, absolutely. And I think society is one of the best ways to get people involved. Also, a lot of students go through uni without ever joining a society, and I'm a staunch advocate of that not being the case. So I think a society showcase every 2 weeks in the lobby would be a good way to get people involved. Additionally, this is a bit off topic, but it's similar to media. The recent closure of Antwerp by the council, that absolutely triggered me, right? Because Antwerp is obviously very close to my heart, just like Pangea, and I personally refuse to sit quietly while the council tries to exercise their jurisdiction over our and your nightlife. And the best thing about student media is it gets people, it galvanizes the people, it gets them involved in a way that they wouldn't have thought possible, because, you know, what does Jeremy Corbyn say? What, for the many, not the few, right? So when people are together, they're strong, but individually, we can't achieve much, which is why I think media encapsulates the student body and can allow us to achieve our goals.
And on that note, we'd like to say thank you to our panel here. Now, before we leave, I'd like to say thank you to all our candidates tonight. opens tomorrow, 1st of March to the 8th of March. So get down and vote for these people who have come to show their manifestos for us today. I believe before we go, we have a few apologies to make. So Sophie Ratchie, who is running for Women's Officer this year, she represents an all-female identifying students and ensure that everyone is able to enjoy a university experience that is safe, empowering and supportive. She says that she will make free tampons and things, sanitary pads, condoms, STD kits, and information on how to access rape kits more widely and easily available in study spaces and student-populated residential areas. She's looking into research going on in the University of Leicester, which self-swab rape kits that would help victims of sexual assault retrieve DNA without going in for a medical examination. She's going to work with existing societies and campaigns to run women-led theatre and music events within the student unions. She already has the support of the Drama Society and the Musical Theatre Society. She wants to hear from you. She's going to run monthly surgeries where female-identifying students can feedback on their experiences at the university in a safe environment. She says after 3 years at the university, she's got to know the university and the city really well. She wants to give something back to the amazing community of women that have supported her throughout her undergrad. She wants to use her own experience of mental health, sexual assault and disability to advocate for all female identifying students at the university. So vote for her. Also, Liberation and Access panel, we have one candidate, Joseph Klopp. He says, please feel free to send over any questions you have or contact to arrange an interview with Joseph. And also you have Sarah Hoy, who has given her apologies for not being able to make the Hustings. She's a mature student, finishing her degree in sociology this year. She can't make today's Husting, but she's still a very strong candidate. She's gone to meet. She was here, but still give her a vote anyway. So thank you for coming on this very cold evening.